Very good. So we're going to get started. First of all, my name is Roger Allred, and I work for Donor Connect. And Donor Connect is the organization that facilitates the recovery and transplantation of human organs. And so I go into the high schools and also the intermediate schools and talk about this topic of organ, cornea, and tissue donation. So for those who don't know, corneas are the lenses that fit on the top of the eye, and they are donated so that people can have their sight restored to them. And organs, you know what organs are, and tissue includes things like blood and bone and that sort of thing. So a little background on me. I raised my family in California, and when I retired, I moved to Utah, and I'm involved with Donor Connect because I'll have to explain to you at the end of my presentation why this is so important to me. But it is important because Donor Connect, even though we talk about organ donation and transplantation, in my way of thinking, what we're really talking about when we're talking about this topic is saving lives. From the beginning of my presentation to the end of my presentation is all about saving lives. So with that as a premise, let's start. So anyone know anyone who has donated an organ or received a transplant? So I have two in the classroom. Have you?
I was telling you the story of my sister who received lungs.
Lungs, okay, great. And lungs are very fragile organs. That was one of the last things that they were able to determine how to do the transplant. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute.
My father's had his corneas replaced twice.
Is that right? Very good. So he was able to receive sight because of donation. So both of you understand the importance of organ donation. You understand it. That's one of the things that we try to communicate to the kids that we talk to. And also, yes.
Just see if there's anyone online. That,
Yeah, I already checked it.
No, okay.
No, they're already there. They're there. They're good.
Oh,
All right. Is there anyone online that would like to share anything about anyone that they know has received an organ or donated an organ? Okay, then we'll press on. So I'm going to share this with you. I share this with the kids, and I'm sure they know this person a lot better than you do. Get going here in a minute. Oh, sorry, that's not quite right. We are going to now listen to Lisa Osmond, and she teaches these classes up in northern Utah. She was in St. George teaching, but now she's there. And the reason that I show this particular video clip is that this is a mother who's lost her child, and she made the decision to donate the organs of her child so that other people could live. And I think it's important that you get the feeling of why a mother would do that. So here, we'll watch that clip now.
We caught up with Adam's mother, Lisa Osmond, in Salt Lake City. She says she's always been an advocate of organ donation, so when Adam got his driver's license, he was excited to tell her he checked yes to be a donor.
He'd mentioned something very briefly to me, just when we kind of ended our conversation. He said, "Mom, if anything should ever happen to me, I hope you'll let them use whatever they can to help other people."
Just a few weeks later, Lisa said Adam, who struggled with being bipolar, was flown to the hospital where a doctor told her her son was brain dead after a drug overdose. Lisa's thoughts went back to the day he got his driver's license.
You know, if my son couldn't come back home, I wanted it to mean something. That conversation we had that day in the kitchen has blessed my life more than I can ever put into words. He's absolutely helped my heart to heal. If he can't be here with me physically, he lives on in other people, and that has truly been a blessing.
A year later, Lisa was told the man who got Adam's liver wanted to meet her. She was ecstatic.
The minute that doorbell rang and I opened up that door, he was with his wife, and I'll tell you what, it was just an instant feeling of family. I love that guy. He's awesome. We're very close. He is truly part of my family.
To become an organ donor, all you need to do is say yes on your driver's license or state ID card, or go online and sign up at www.yesutah.org. It's also a good idea to let your family know of your decision so your wishes can be carried out.
All right, what I'd like to do now is talk about what's on the screen. and then we'll get back to Lisa's comments. So first of all, say yes on your driver's license or state ID. That's the reason that we're talking to you folks, is because you are dealing with people who are getting their driver's license. And I'll tell you a personal experience. When I must have been 40 years old the first time I saw that question on the application to get a driver's license. And I looked at that question and I thought, I just came in to get a driver's license and now you're asking me about my organs. So that kind of blew me away. So that is a real important thing to remember when we're talking to 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds, is this is kind of out of the blue. You know, their focus is driving, not what am I going to do with my organs. And so that's one of the reasons that we like to give these presentations. We give them in driver's ed classes, and we also give them in health classes. So it just so happens that in Southern Utah, where I go into the classrooms and teach, we're giving them all to health classes. But I've noticed at this conference, I've seen 4 of the teachers that do health, and then they're also driver's ed instructors. So it's a good thing. Also, if someone has not understood organ donation, they've never been educated about it, they really don't know the choice that they're making. So if they make a choice and then later on in life they say, wait a minute, I think I made the wrong choice, you can always go to yesutah.org and change that election, either yes or no, doesn't matter. You can make that election as many times as you want during your lifetime. Last, we encourage the students to talk to their parents about organ donation, because even though they might have one of those boxes checked on their driver's license, if they don't tell their parents what they're thinking, we all know that they are not adults. And until they're an adult, age 18, the parents or the guardian is the one that makes that final decision. So we encourage the kids to talk to their parents so that they know, so the parents know how the child feels about this. Let's go back to Lisa for a minute. So here we have a mother. She's just lost her high school age son, lost that son. They made the decision to donate his organs, and they saved 3 people's lives and gave corneas, gave sight to another person because of that donation. And she says that decision, quote, absolutely helped my heart to heal. And if I were to put the whole reason for organ donation in a nutshell, it would be this. Through organ donation, people get to live that would otherwise die. And at the same time, the family of the donor receives comfort. And so it's a double benefit. We take a tragic situation and we make the very best that we can, because people get to live and the family gets comforted. And that's really the message. So why is this so important? Well, we have the hospitals, we have the doctors. We can, meaning they can, the surgeons, they can do these operations. The problem is that we have people dying because we don't have enough organs. So right now in the United States, this number fluctuates. It fluctuates between 100 and 110,000 people are waiting for an organ donation. That's a lot of people. In the state of Utah, that number fluctuates from about 750 to about 850. And because every 10 minutes, because people get older, people get sick, about every 10 minutes someone gets added to that waiting list. And the tragic thing is, as the graphic shows, on average, 17 people in that list die every single day. They don't die because we couldn't help them. They die because there aren't organs. But because of education like we're doing about organ donation, so people can really understand what it means, last year we were able to save the lives of 41,000 people. Over 41,000 people received an organ transplant and now are living a normal and happy life. There are 3 types of donors we're going to talk about today: living donors, organ donors, and tissue donors. And I'll just get into each of those. So when I give this presentation to the kids, this is what I was referring to earlier. They know this person. A lot of us think, I think I know that person, but it's Selena Gomez. So she's a singer. And as I tell the kids, she's not on my playlist, but she's probably on their playlist. But you can see there's an Instagram post here thanking the doctors, her fans. But most of all, she's thanking Francia Risa, who's in this hospital bed next to her. Francia Risa donated the kidneys. and save Selena Gomez's life. But I want to talk more in depth about how that works. So when I talk to the kids in the school, I give them some anatomy lessons because there's a lot of the kids don't really even understand this. So we all have two kidneys. Our kidneys are about the size of our fists. So mine would be this size. If you look at your fist, that's the size your kidneys would be. And they fit right there in the back. And most people know their purpose is to filter our blood. And when those kidneys fail, which they just fail probably more often than any other organ in the body, I'll get to that in just a minute. These people have to go on dialysis. And dialysis is a mechanical way of filtering the blood so that that person can live waiting for a transplant. And it's not a fun process, 2 to 3 times a week, 2 to 3 hours at a time. And if you've ever had someone that you care about go through a dialysis, you'll know what I'm talking about, how tragic that is. So how does a transplant work? A living donation, a living transplant. So you see the first 2 things on the list are 2 organs, and the next 2 things on the list are tissue. So it's organ and tissue donation. So we'll talk about kidneys. So let's assume that there is this is what I do in the classroom, just so you know. So I usually find a girl that's about 5 foot tall, and I say to her, okay, I want you to hold up your fist. So she holds up her fist, and I hold up my fist next to hers, and I say, okay, class, can I donate my kidney to her? And almost always the kids in the classroom will say, well, no. And I say, well, why not? And I say, well, because your kidney's too big. And I say, well, what about the fact that she's a female and I'm a male? And they say, well, I'm not sure about that. I say, and I explain to them, the size doesn't matter and the gender doesn't matter. Because of where our kidneys are in our body, there seems to be plenty of room. In fact, a kidney from an adult can go into a baby's body. That has been done. So that is one of those facts about kidneys. But there is a matching process, and the matching process is through a blood draw. So they take a blood draw, and we have to make sure that the blood types match. Like, so I'm an O positive, so I could donate to anyone who's an O. And so the blood types have to match. There's also a chemical component of our blood called antigens. And those antigens have to be compatible, because if the blood type is not compatible and the antigens are not compatible, that donated kidney to someone else would be rejected, and that would be a total waste. So let's assume that, everything matches up. Assume I'm a donor. They would take me into surgery along with the recipient. They'd make an incision on this side or this side of my abdomen or under the belly button so they can go either direction. And on the recipient, they'd make an incision on the side where they wanted to put the kidney. They would take a kidney out of me. They would put that kidney into that person, sew them up, and we'd both be good to go. Another thing I tell the kids is that, remember, I told you our kidneys are where? Well, they're in their back. Well, then why are they making an incision here and here for our kidneys that are in the back? Well, the reason is the doctors do not want to cut back here, because you put your hands back here and twist this way and twist that way. You'll notice you can feel the muscle that's underneath your fingers. So they go through the abdomen. Again, because of where it's located, they can do that without cutting that muscle, because muscle takes a long time to heal. So that's the reason it's done that way. Now, I just said, so they take the kidney out of me, they put the kidney in someone else, and we're both good to go. Now, if you're like me, you would say, I want some evidence. Okay, so here's some evidence. This is a friend of mine in California whose son needed a kidney transplant when he was in his late teens. Well, she decided that she was going to see if she was a match. She was. She donated a kidney. And the picture that's on the screen now is a picture of Kathy and her son at the son's wedding. So when I say, you're good to go, well, he was good to go. He got to have a life. He got to have a family, a career, and got to be able to be alive. But what about her? She's about 5 foot. She probably weighs maybe 100 pounds, maybe. And after about 2 years after she donated that kidney to her son, after this wedding, she did a rim-to-rim hike on the Grand Canyon. So that means you go up one rim, down to the valley floor, across the valley floor, and up to the other rim. In the hot Arizona desert, in her late 40s, with one kidney. So when I tell you you only need one kidney, I'm telling you the absolute truth. You only need one kidney. The next on the list is the liver. I always tell the kids it's the second largest organ in the body. What's the largest? And some of them know, which I never knew until I was in my 60s, and that's the skin. But the liver is a large organ. So a person my size, my liver would weigh about 3 pounds. It'd be about the size of a football and fits in the gut right here. It has a large lobe and a small lobe. And in 1988, they developed a process where they can take the small lobe of the liver and transplant it into someone else's body. The part that they took off, the piece that they took off of the liver, grows back in 6 to 8 weeks. And that piece, that lobe of the liver that is transplanted, that grows to be a fully functional liver. So you can imagine if you take, and this is what I do with the high school students, I pick the football players, you know, the guys that they're already 6 foot tall, and you know that they've got a lot more growth in them, and they weigh, 250 pounds. And I say, okay, they take a piece of my liver and put it in him, even though he's going to grow, he's going to be a lot bigger than he is now. That piece of my liver will grow to be a fully functional liver in his body for the rest of his life. Summary, we have 2 kidneys. We have a liver that we can take a piece off of, and that piece grows back, and that piece grows in someone else's body. Why? And the answer is we don't know. But one of the high school students said, maybe it's so we can donate organs and save other people's lives. And I thought that was really cool. But that's probably the best explanation that we're going to get. I also do remind the students, though, you have to be at least 18 before you can be a living donor. So, it's not something that they're going to rush out to. In fact, I had one of the junior high kids said, I'm going to go donate my liver right now. Obviously, that didn't happen. Next, blood. So I always ask the kids if they've donated, because the kids that I'm teaching typically are old enough to donate blood, 16, with their parents' permission. And if not, I ask them if their parents are blood donors, and a lot of them have parents that are blood donors. And I say, okay, when you go home, I want you to tell your mom and your dad you're a hero. And why is that? What do heroes do? Save lives. So that's exactly right. Kidney donors, liver donors, blood donors, bone marrow donors are all heroes because they've saved someone's life. And so the last one on the list is bone marrow, typically used, it's the center part of the bone, is extracted and put in the bone marrow of typically someone suffering from cancer. So all these people are heroes. All right, so we've talked about living donation. Now I want to go to organ donation. These are people who have died. And people who are organ donors typically have died as a result of a traumatic head injury, because you have to be brain dead in order to be an organ donor. And I'll get to that in just a minute. So I asked the kids, all right, traumatic head injuries, how do those happen? Well, something hard hits your head. No. Well, that's what happens, but how does that happen? Car accidents. Car accidents. Again, that's the reason I'm making a presentation here, because driving safety is so important. And I do address in my presentations just a little bit about deadly behaviors when people are driving. And I emphasize this one, and I don't know if this is something you would ever use, but this is what I do. I take out my phone and I say, if you're driving and you're texting while you're driving, you're saying, I don't care about you. I don't care if I destroy your car. I don't care if I injure you so you can never walk again. I don't care if I kill you, because my text is so important. So I encourage them to put these things away, because that's the way the teenagers die. And we don't want that. Also, I tell them, if you have someone in your car who's distracting you from driving, pull to the curb, say, get out and walk home, because distracted teenagers die in accidents. And I say to them, that's kind of rude, but I'd rather have you be rude than be dead. So let's come back to this. So someone gets in a traffic accident. Oftentimes they will take them to the hospital and put them on a ventilator, which is that machine that's on the screen. That is a ventilator. The reason is that ventilator allows their body to heal, keeping those organs healthy, keeping their oxygen in them. Because as we sit here, we're breathing. Your brain is sending a message to your lungs, breathe. You don't even realize it, but it's happening. But when someone has a traumatic head injury, that message is not being sent. So that keeps them alive. Now, if the person is brain dead, that ventilator keeps the organs healthy for transplant. And that's the reason that they have to be on a ventilator. Ventilators are in the hospital. You don't find them at Walmart. So the person has to die in the hospital to be an organ donor. This is what doctors do in order to determine if a person is brain dead. Now, remember, every slide that I'm showing you, I show the students in junior high and in high school, everyone. So this is called a cerebral angiogram, and this is what is done to determine, the doctors do this, to determine if a person is legally dead, brain dead. So this is a cerebral angiogram as if it were done on anyone in this room or anyone at home. So we have blood coming up the spinal column to the brainstem. From the brainstem, all these blood vessels are taking the nutrients and oxygen to the rest of the brain to keep it alive, to keep it healthy. We all know that if we were denied food and oxygen, we would die. Well, the brain is exactly the same way. So that gets injured, and this is the cerebral angiogram of someone who has died of brain death. Blood still here in the spinal column, blood in the brainstem, but no nutrients and oxygen is getting to the rest of the brain. So that person has died. Legally dead. Now, oftentimes, I can say often, too many times, the doctor will go to the family and say, I'm sorry, but your loved one has died. We did all that we could to save them, but they're brain dead. And the family oftentimes will say, wait a minute, doc, I was just in his room. His chest was rising and falling. His skin tones haven't changed. He looks like he could wake up at any time. And then the doctor has to tell them, I'm sorry, he's brain dead. There's no brain activity. The reason his chest is rising and falling and that his skin tones haven't changed is the ventilator. So this is it's a hard fact, but it is a fact. So these are organs that can be transplanted. We'll start with the heart. We all have a heart. It's also about the size of our fist. Fits right here in our chest. And then we have 2 kidneys, so that's 3 organs. We have 1 liver. We have that can be bisected, so that's 5. 2 lungs, 1 pancreas, 1 set of small intestines. So from 1 deceased donors, we can recover 9 organs, but typically we only recover 5. Only recover 5. But I want you to think of it in these terms. You might say, well, okay, that's interesting. Let's assume that everyone in this classroom, we need a transplant, a heart, a liver, kidney, something, okay? And now I'm a family member of someone who has just died of brain death. The doctor comes to me and says, would you consider donating the organs of your loved ones so that other people can live? And I say, of course I would. And so those organs are recovered, and then those organs go to us, and we're all alive. Or now I'm the family member of someone who has just died of brain death. The doctor comes to me and says, would you donate the organs of your loved ones so that other people can live? And I say, oh, yuck, that's icky. I don't want to think about that. Those organs go in the ground and we all die. So that is, that's the image I would like people to have in their brains when they think about organ donation. But there's a lot of rumors, myths, and misconceptions about organ donation. So I want to talk about those briefly, starting with this video clip.
I renewed my license today. Check the box to be an organ donor. Dude, that means when you're in the emergency room and the doctors find out, they're gonna slow down. Do you realize how many people need organs?
Now, I do not recommend that you kick your friends in the head when they say something stupid, but I do recommend that you help them understand the difference between truth and baloney. So the medical staff is there for one reason, to save your life. That's the reason that they're there. This is the fact. They do everything that they possibly can. They have nothing to do with organization. That is our job at Donor Connect. It's only when that doctor says, I'm sorry, your loved one is brain dead, that Donor Connect comes in the picture. Different organizations, different people, they only come together once that person is declared brain dead. You never have to worry about a doctor trying to grab your organs. What if you have medical concerns, cancer, diabetes? You know, typically those are not problems. Even if you cannot donate blood, you usually can donate organs. I'll say that one more time. Even if you cannot donate blood, you can usually donate organs. So what we encourage people to do is say yes to be an organ donor and let the doctor decide. What does my religion say about donation? So a lot of people say, I don't want to offend God. Fine. If that's you, talk to your pastor, priest, minister, bishop, rabbi, imam, and ask them, what do you think? And all of them will say basically the same thing. They'll say, God taught us to do good and kind things. Saving someone's life is a good and kind thing. God rewards people who do good and kind things. So you don't have to worry about that. But still, it's your choice. Can I have an open casket funeral? Well, I live in southern Utah. I've been to all the mortuaries in the St. George area. I've talked to the morticians and asked, can you tell the difference between someone who's been a donor and someone who has not? And they say, absolutely not. It's our job as a mortician to prepare that body so you can have an open casket funeral. You don't have to worry about that. Who pays for a donation? So I'm an accountant. Did I tell you that? Okay, well, I'm an accountant. In fact, I'll share this with you too. My brother says there's nothing wrong with an accountant that a personality would fix. So, that's me. So I think about doctor's bills and hospital bills. And I say, well, I like this idea, but I can't afford it. No, that's wrong too. Just as soon as the family says, we will donate the organs of our loved ones so that other people can live, they don't pay another dime in medical expenses. Those are all picked up through Donor Connect and passed along. So that is not something a donor has to worry about ever. Am I too young or too old to be a donor? So here on the graphic, we have a grandpa, just like me, a grandpa. So let's assume I were to die today on a ventilator. My organs would go to someone about my age, another grandpa, who would be thrilled to get them so they'd have to spend more time with their grandkids. On the other end of the spectrum, it's a little more dicey. We have babies. You would take an organ from a baby? That's a question I get. And I explain it this way. So we have a couple who's waited 9 long months to have a baby. The doctor comes to them and says, I'm sorry, but your baby's brain dead. There's nothing we can do. I'm so sorry. At the same time, another couple has waited 9 long months to have a baby, and the doctor comes to them and says, I'm sorry, but your baby needs a heart transplant. If your baby does not get a heart transplant, your baby will not survive. If the first couple donate the heart of their baby to the second couple's baby, we have one tragedy rather than two. Again, everything we talk about is about saving lives. Now, this is an organ recovery surgeon. We do not say harvesting organs. That's a TV word. This is organ recovery. And now I'm going to show you what I show the students, and that's pictures of actual human organs and with some explanation. So let's go. So this is a heart, and that heart on the surface, you can see it's yellow. That's fat. So fat is on our organs to help to protect them. Also, I want you to understand that a heart is a muscle. So I want you to look at the muscle tone on that heart, because that is a healthy heart, compared to that diseased heart. You see the muscle tone there, you come back and you see the muscle tone there. And so you say, yeah, that looks pretty healthy, pretty healthy. This is Abby. Abby went to an intermediate school in St. George. She was running around the gym and PE class in 7th grade and just collapsed. They air flighted her to Salt Lake City. And there, the doctor said, you have a congenital heart defect. And so they gave Abby a new heart up in Salt Lake. She came back, finished school, intermediate school and high school in southern Utah, and then went on to be the editor of the newspaper at Dixie State. She graduated last year, and now she's a newlywed. So that woman right there has that donor to thank for allowing her to go through school and get married and have a wonderful life. That is a kidney. Now, remember I told you there's between 100 and 110,000 people waiting for an organ. 80% of them are waiting for kidneys, 80%. One of the reasons is this. This is called polycystic disease. So on the right, you have a healthy kidney. On the left, you have a polycystic kidney. And the reason I show that slide is that over 500,000 people in the United States have polycystic disease. And that contributes to the number of people who are waiting for a kidney. This is Fa Puiaki. So Fa Puiaki, when she was just a little girl, had kidney failure. And so they had to put her on dialysis. And so those that can see the screen on the upper right, you can see this little 2 to 3 year old girl hooked up to this machine to filter her blood. Now, I just want you to think, if you've had children or grandchildren, and you look at that little girl and you think 2 to 3 hours at a time, 2 to 3 days a week, a horrible life for such a little girl. So she's got blood flowing out of her and blood flowing in her. And there's no other choice except a transplant. And she was she was able to receive a transplant, and now she's a healthy elementary age child. This is a picture of a liver. On the left is the large lobe, on the right is the small lobe. In the middle, the white is a gallbladder, and the other flesh thing that you see there are the fingers of the surgeon holding that liver. It's that large. Now I'm going to show you the picture, and I'll tell you what I tell the kids. I said, when the kids come to you in high school and say, let's go party, 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 this is what happens when you abuse alcohol. So don't do that. Don't abuse alcohol. This is Annie. When Annie was 5 years old, she started to turn yellow. Even the whites of her eyes were yellow, and that's a condition called jaundice, which is very common in newborns, but she was 5. So they took her to the doctor. The doctor said she needs a liver transplant, and if she doesn't get it, she's going to die. So her parents held a 6th birthday party for her, even though she wasn't 6, because they didn't know that she was going to make it to her 6th birthday. Well, she did receive the liver, and I met her at Tuacahn High School down in St. George, and now she's graduated and off on her own. Beautiful girl, and she's alive today because of the donation of a liver. Those are lungs, 2 things in the bucket. I call that a bucket of lungs. It's probably inappropriate, but that's what I call it. And this is what happens when you smoke. So I tell the kids, this is what it does. You can't swim, you can't ride a bicycle without coughing, because that's what it does. That tar collects on your lungs. And then the kids talk about vaping. And I say, look, vaping is a problem. We've already had people who have had to have a lung transplant because they were vaping. And I tell them, I would tell you, just like I tell my own grandkids, is what I say. I don't want you to be my age, dragging around an oxygen tank with tubes stuck up your nose because of the decision that you made in high school. So don't do that. This is Colby. And Colby sadly had depression. He didn't get help. And he committed suicide, which is very tragic. The only silver lining in this story is that he was an organ donor. Because of that decision to be an organ donor, he saved 4 people's lives, including Jerusha. So Jerusha is a woman about the age, the mother of most high school students, and she had got a lung disease, not because of anything that she did. She just got the lung disease. And the doctor came to her and said, you're going to either get a transplant or you're going to die in this hospital bed. Well, fortunately, she received Colby's lungs, and now she's back doing what moms do. All right, so living donation, organ donation, tissue donation. This is tissue. Bone, cartilage, and ligaments, blood vessels, heart valves, skin, corneas. So let's go to this. There's many ways that you can use bone. And again, I'm not a medical person, but I do have experience with one. In the lower or right-hand corner is bone powder. So bone powder is actual human bone that has been ground to a powder. This past summer, I had an emergency tooth extraction right here. And when they took that tooth out, into the socket, they put bone powder. Bone powder stimulates the growth of your jawbone. And because of that stimulation of my jawbone, it got harder and stronger. And I was able to have a tooth implant because of that. That's one of the reasons that we use bone. Those who are into athletics, you know about meniscus tears and ACL tears. Well, ACL tears are repaired from a tendon that is donated. Here's another one. This is Brennan. He lived in Idaho, where he lived on a ranch. They did not have trash pickup. So he and his friend went out to burn the trash because that was his job in the family. And they wanted to go play, and the trash was just taking too long. So they decided that they would hurry the process. They dumped gasoline on the trash, and it got on his shirt. So when Brennan lit the fire, it caught his shirt on fire. Because his friend was there, they were able to roll him to put out the fire, but not before it did this damage. You can see on the left-hand side the damage to this young man. Because of the donation of skin, that skin allowed him to heal and to be alive today. And now here he is on the right-hand side with babies of his own because of the donation of skin. Corneas. So on the upper right-hand corner, we have a bulging cornea. That is a diseased cornea. So you can't see through it anymore. So what they do is they take a donated cornea from a deceased person and they put it on the eye. They sew it in, the lower right-hand corner is to sew it in. And once the operation takes place, that person can see it. So all of these are miracles because of organ donation. So now we're closing in on the end. I want to tell you why I'm here, and this is where my story starts. So in my 40s, I took my son with his scout troop, and we climbed Mount Whitney in Southern California. That's 14,500 feet above sea level. So it's above the tree line, so there's nothing up there but rocks, nothing but rocks. So we came back from that trip. He went back to school, and I went back to work. So I was sitting at my desk with my computer. All of a sudden, it felt like someone had hit me right here with a 2x4. And the force of that knocked me onto the floor. So here I am laying on the floor, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to die. Because my dad had died at 52 of a stroke. And I was sure that I just had a stroke. And I wasn't that far away from 52. So I said, well, wait a minute, I can still think. So I better do something. So I crawled over to my desk where my phone was. That was back in the days when phones had cords. And I picked up my phone. And instead of calling 911, I called my wife. So she brought my daughter. They came down to the office. They drugged me out of the office. And she told me later, I thought there was a 50-50 chance that she would be dead when I got there. So shouldn't have done that. And at the emergency room, they did all sorts of tests, including a spinal tap. So I know what that feels like. They came back with this diagnosis. You have atrial fibrillation. So the top chambers of my heart, the atria, rather than beating rhythmically, were just beating whenever they wanted to. And because of that, I formed a blood clot on my heart. That blood clot went to my brain. That's what knocked me on the floor. It's called a transient ischemic attack, a mini stroke. And so that's the reason you were on the floor. We're going to take care of you. So they gave me blood thinners. And they put a pacemaker in me so that my heart would beat more rhythmically, which was great. Well, after climbing Mount Whitney, this is what now I was doing. Sitting on my couch with my wife and my channel changer. That was my life. I'd go to work, I'd come home and sit on the couch because I just did not have enough energy. So I went back to the doctor and he said, well, I have bad news. Your heart is enlarging, which means that you probably have cardiomyopathy, which means that your heart muscle is dying. So we're going to give you some medication to hopefully stabilize you and see how this works. Well, it worked pretty well for 3 or 4 years. But then because my heart muscle was dying, I developed ventricular tachycardia. So the bottom chambers of my heart, the ventricles, rather than squeezing and sending blood to my brain, would sometimes just quiver. And that's what tachycardia is. So if I get no blood to my brain, what happens to me? I die. So the doctor said, no, we're not going to let that happen because remember, they're not in the business of grabbing your organs. So they sent me to UCLA. So here's a picture of me at UCLA. Now you might see something in this picture that looks odd, and it is a dog, a big dog. Good Morning America was doing a program on pet therapy. So they flopped this dog on my bed and took a picture, and that dog did nothing to help my heart, but he did put in me this device right here. This is an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. And it was put right here in my chest, right there. And from the top part, wires went under the skin to my carotid artery and down to my heart, and my heart latched onto those wires. And so this is defibrillator, just like the AEDs that are in the school. And we all have seen TV programs where they put the paddles on someone and say clear and shoot the bolt of electricity and the body bounces, okay? That's exactly what this did to me, 11 times. So I know what it feels like to be defibrillated. It felt like someone was on the inside of me with a baseball bat just swinging at my rib cage, and my body would bounce. Wasn't a fun feeling. Wasn't a fun feeling. So the last time I was at home alone and I started to feel lightheaded. So I sat down on a chair in my kitchen. And the next thing I knew, I was laying on the floor on the tile. And my head was hurting. And I reached up here and pulled my hand away. My head was bloody because I'd fallen off the chair and hit my head on the tile. So I was awake and I thought, oh, I feel bad. I know what's happened. I know what's happened, something with my heart. So it just so happened that I was under the phone. So I reach up to the phone and guess who I called? My wife. Yes, I did not learn. That's the point I'd like to make here. I did not learn. So she took me to the doctor, and the doctor has a device that looks a lot like a mouse, and put it on the top of this device and read it. And he said, okay, this went off once. And your heart said, no, I'm not going to start. So it's made to wind up and hit you with a larger bolt of electricity. So that's exactly what it did. He said, that's the reason you're in my office. And then he said these words to me, Roger, you are dying. You don't want to hear that from your doctor. So he said, I can't fix you, so I'm going to send you to get a heart transplant. So they sent me to Cedar Sinai Hospital. Here I am hooked up to all sorts of monitors and some super drugs that will keep me alive, but not for long. You know, I have a time that I can be on those drugs and then it will stop working. So I was waiting for someone to donate a heart. And I'm an O positive, so I can only take from O positives. So I had to wait for someone with an O positive heart to die so that I could live. Yeah, it's not fun. So 18 days later, while I was going through this process of when's this going to happen, when I said, they got the word, we have a heart. So they took me into surgery. You know, we have a sternum that extends from here to here, and our heart is right under the sternum. That's where our heart is located. So to get to the heart, they had to saw the sternum. They cracked me open, and that red floppy heart that I showed you a picture of, that's what mine looked like. They took that out, threw that away, and put into me the heart of a 22-year-old. Then they put the sternum back together, and you can't sew it, so they wired it. So if you see an x-ray of me even today, it looks like I have little wired bow ties running down my sternum. And that's what allowed me to heal. While I was still in intensive care after the surgery, I said, I'm going to climb Mount Whitney again, which was really a dumb thing to say, because now I'm almost 60 years old. And just 3 weeks prior to that, I couldn't even climb up to my second-story bedroom without stopping on the stairs and just twice. But I was going to climb Mount Whitney. Well, because of that transplant, here I am on the top of Mount Whitney. And this is Landon on the far right. He was the boy that was in the first picture with his two brothers and one of my daughters and a few of the spouses. And they're all of us 6 days, 60 miles, 14,500 feet above sea level because of this new heart. And so people say, you know, it's really awesome that you get to be able to have that heart to do those sort of things. Then you can climb mountains, and that's exactly right. But for me, the most important part was I got to see my children married and my grandchildren born. And that's my family. And that's my theory. Because I am so grateful. In fact, just this morning, I had another grandson. So it's important. It's so important that I wanted to express my appreciation to the family that donated the heart to me. So every year on my anniversary, my heart, we called it a heart anniversary, I write a letter to the family, the anonymous family who donated that heart to me, thanking them. And I went 10 years and did not hear a word. So I thought, this person probably is having a hard time dealing with the fact that they've lost their child. And I said, okay, that's fine. But after the 10th year, I got a phone call from the organization that handles the letters and said, the donor mother wants to talk to you. And I said, literally, is this a scam? And the person on the other end said, no, it's not. So I called the donor organization where he lived when he donated that heart. And she said, no, this is for real. So I called her up, the mother. Her name is Zulema Fragoso. And I expressed to her with some tears, that's how I do things, how grateful I am. And she expressed to me how grateful she was that I was going into the schools and talking about organ donation. Because of organ donation, other people are going to get to live. This was her son, my donor, Giovanni Fragoso. And the reason that she felt so positive and so strongly about this is that Giovanni did not make good choices. He spent a lot of time in jail. He was in a gang. And he died at a 7-Eleven parking lot at 1 o'clock in the morning. His girlfriend had got in to get something and someone came by, probably a rival gang, and shot him. They took him to the hospital. They declared him brain dead, and his heart is now in my chest. And one of the things I've heard someone say is no matter how you lived your life, you can go out a life-saving hero. So this man who did not make good choices, he is my hero because he's allowed me to do these things that I've done. And that's my story. So we have a few minutes. Do you have any questions? And you the watching by Zoom, if you have any questions, just pipe right up, please. So I'm in, yeah.
Do you take a lot of medications?
So when you receive a transplant, you have to take immunosuppressant drugs. So I take 2 immunosuppressant drugs twice a day. I also take, when you get a transplanted heart, I know that your blood pressure goes up. So I have to take one of those. So that's what I take, blood pressure and immunosuppressants. It's a miracle. I mean, it's literally a miracle. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, then we're done. So thank you for coming. I appreciate those of you at home and you 2 gentlemen here. Thank you for coming.